As Isabella stared at the surveillance photos, his phone buzzed. It was his partner, Agent Roman, who calmly admitted, "We had suspicions, needed confirmation before telling you." But the real shock came when Roman revealed the first photo was taken 6 weeks ago, and there were signs even before that. "Thank you for choosing Unitalish today. Your support means everything to us. Before we begin, we would love to know, where in the world are you listening from?" Now, let's dive into today's story. The blue glow of multiple computer monitors cast harsh shadows across Isabella Cooper's face as he leaned forward in his home office chair, the leather creaking in protest. The digital clock on his desk blinked 3:02 a.m., but sleep was the furthest thing from his mind. His hands trembled slightly as he spread the surveillance photos across his desk, each image striking like a physical blow. The first photo showed the grand entrance of the St. Regis Hotel in downtown Boston. The timestamp read Thursday, 9:47 p.m. His wife, Courtney Price's elegant figure was unmistakable in her charcoal gray suit as she crossed the marble lobby, her dark hair falling in waves past her shoulders. Not at her medical conference venue, as she claimed, but 30 miles away from where she was supposed to be. The second photo made his stomach clench. Through the hotel bar's window, Courtney sat close to Tom McLaughlin, Meridian Pharmaceutical CEO, too close. Her hand rested on his arm, her wedding ring catching the light. He leaned in, whispering something that made her throw her head back in laughter. The third photo, Isabella pushed it away, unable to look at it again. The hotel room key card, the elevator, his hand on the small of Courtney's back. He didn't need to see the rest of the sequence to know where they went. His phone buzzed, making him start. Agent Roman Herman's name flashed on the screen. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his voice before answering. "You're still up," Roman said, not a question. "You knew." The accusation slipped out before he could stop it. A long pause followed. "We had suspicions, needed confirmation before telling you." "How long, Isabella? How long?" Another pause. "First surveillance photo was taken 6 weeks ago, but there were signs before that." Isabella ran a hand over his face, feeling the rough stubble of 3 days without shaving. "You should have told me immediately, like you told me immediately about bringing Courtney into the investigation." Roman's voice carried an edge. "I warned you, Isabella, personal and professional don't mix." Those were my exact words. The memory hit him with painful clarity. 18 months ago, in Roman's office, arguing his case, he'd been so confident, so sure of himself and his marriage. "Courtney's position is perfect," he'd insisted. "As a clinical researcher, she has access to all the trial data. She can help us decode the medical documents, track the money through the research department." "It's too risky," Roman countered, pacing behind her desk. "If anything goes wrong, it won't. I trust her completely." Now, staring at the photos, those words tasted like ashes in his mouth. "I need to know everything," Isabella said into the phone. "No more holding back. Come to the office first thing tomorrow." "No, now, Roman. I've been under deep cover for 3 years. My wife is sleeping with our primary target, and God knows what else. I think I've earned some answers at 3 a.m. "Fine, give me 20 minutes to get there." The FBI's field office was eerily quiet at this hour, their footsteps echoing through empty corridors. Roman's office looked different in the dim light, the walls of awards and commendations casting strange shadows. She pulled a thick file from her safe and spread its contents across her desk. It started with irregularities in the research department's security logs, she explained, pointing to highlighted entries. Courtney's access card was being used at odd hours, accessing files unrelated to her department. "She's been helping me gather evidence," Isabella protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "These weren't trial documents." Roman pulled out another report, personnel files, specifically employees in the Asian offices who later disappeared. Isabella's mind raced back through conversations with Courtney over the past months. Her increased tension, the late nights, the changed phone password. He'd attributed it all to stress from their undercover work. What a fool he'd been. "There's more," Roman continued, hesitating before pulling out another document. "We've been monitoring McLaughlin's private accounts, large transfers to offshore accounts tagged for consulting fees. The dates match Courtney's international trips." The implication hit Isabella like a physical blow. "She's been on his payroll the whole time." "We think longer." Roman's voice was gentle. "Isabella, We found records dating back to before you went undercover, before you even met her. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Isabella gripped the edge of the desk, his knuckles white. That's not possible. We met at a medical conference in Chicago. It was completely random. Was it? Roman slid another photo across the desk. Courtney at another conference, 6 months before Chicago, speaking with McLaughlin. Isabella pushed back from the desk abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. He began to pace, his mind racing through every moment, every memory, looking for signs. He should have seen it. Their first meeting, Courtney spilling coffee on him, so apologetic, so charming. Their whirlwind romance. Her excitement when he mentioned his new job at Meridian. Had it all been calculated? Had any of it been real? A knock at the door made them both jump. Agent Saren entered, carrying a laptop. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, "but you need to see this." Judith McNeil just made contact. Judith McNeil, McLaughlin's assistant turned confidential informant, appeared on the screen via a secure connection. Her usual composed demeanor was cracked, anxiety clear in her expression. "Something's happening," she said without preamble. "Courtney's been in McLaughlin's office for hours. They're going through the secure servers, downloading massive amounts of data." Isabella leaned closer to the screen. "What kind of data?" "Everything. Trial documents, personal files, financial records." But she's focusing on the Asian operations, specifically the employees who vanished in the past year. "How many?" Roman asked. 12 so far. All of them had raised concerns about the trial protocols, ethical violations, falsified data, dangerous side effects that were being covered up. Isabella's mind flashed to conversations with Courtney about the trials, her casual dismissal of the concerns, her insistence that everything was being handled properly. Had she already known about the disappearances then? Had she helped plan them? "There's something else," Judith continued, her voice dropping. "I overheard Courtney on the phone earlier. She mentioned a cleanup operation scheduled for tomorrow night, and she mentioned your name, Isabella." The room fell silent. Isabella felt Roman's eyes on him, but he kept his gaze fixed on the screen. "Send us everything you have," he said finally. "And Judith, be careful." After ending the call, Isabella stood at the window, watching the first hints of Daisy color the sky. His FBI training kicked in, pushing personal feelings aside, focusing on operational security. "We need to move up the timeline," he said. "If they're spooked enough to start cleaning house." "No," Roman's voice was firm. "We stick to the plan. We don't have enough evidence yet to take down the whole operation. They're going to start destroying evidence, and we'll catch them in the act. But we need to be smart about this." Isabella turned to face her. "Smart like I was smart about Courtney." Roman's expression softened. "Isabella, you couldn't have known." "I should have. All those late nights, the changed passwords, the mysterious calls." He laughed bitterly. "I actually thought she was helping decode the trial documents. Instead, she was." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Focus on the job," Roman advised. "That's all you can do right now." Isabella nodded, his jaw set. "I need to get back. I have a breakfast meeting with McLaughlin in 3 hours. Are you sure you can handle it?" "I'm still his CFO, still deep cover." Isabella managed a grim smile. "Besides, I want to look him in the eye." The drive back to his house was surreal. The early morning streets were empty, the sky lightening to a pale gray. Isabella parked in the driveway, staring at the house he shared with Courtney, their dream home with its perfectly manicured lawn and wraparound porch. All part of their cover story, the successful pharmaceutical executives living the American dream. Inside, he heard Courtney in the kitchen, the familiar sounds of coffee brewing, cupboards opening and closing. How many mornings had they shared like this? How many kisses, conversations, moments he thought were real? "You're up early," Courtney said as he entered, not turning from the coffee maker. Her voice was perfectly normal, loving even. "Trouble sleeping," something like that. Isabella watched her, looking for signs, tells, anything to indicate the magnitude of her deception, but her movements were smooth, practiced, betraying nothing. "I was thinking about dinner tonight," she continued, finally turning to face him. "That new Italian place downtown. We could celebrate your meeting with Tom going well." The casual use of McLaughlin's first name hit Isabella like a slap. Had she always called him Tom? Had he just never noticed? "Can't tonight," he managed. "Late meeting with the Asia team." Something flickered in Courtney's eyes. Concern, warning. but it was gone so quickly he might have imagined it. That's too bad. She crossed the kitchen, pressing a kiss to his cheek. Her perfume, the same one she'd worn since they met, suddenly seemed cloying. Rain check. Isabella forced himself to smile, to lean into her kiss like he always did. Rain check. She headed upstairs to get ready for work, her heels clicking on the hardwood floors. Isabella waited until he heard the shower running before pulling out his phone. I need a team on her today, he texted Roman. Every move. The response came quickly. Already on it. Be careful. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls, Isabella playing his role as the diligent CFO while his mind raced with possibilities. Every interaction took on new meaning, every conversation potentially hiding double meanings. McLaughlin's breakfast meeting was the worst, sitting across from him at their usual table at the St. Regis, the same hotel from the surveillance photos, watching him casually discuss quarterly projections as if he hadn't been with Isabella's wife just days ago in this same building. Everything all right, Isabella? McLaughlin asked, noticing his distraction. You seem tired. Isabella forced a laugh. Late night with the Asian numbers. You know how it is. Yes. McLaughlin's smile didn't reach his eyes. Asia's been keeping us all busy lately. The double meaning wasn't lost on Isabella. He wondered if McLaughlin knew that he knew. If this was all some elaborate game of cat and mouse. The thought made him feel sick. Back at the office, Isabella buried himself in work, trying to maintain his cover while gathering what information he could. But everywhere he looked, he saw signs of Courtney's involvement. Her signature on key documents, her name in meeting minutes, her fingerprints all over the company's darkest secrets. A text from an unknown number made his phone buzz mid-afternoon. Parking garage, level B2, 15 minutes. Important. Judith. Isabella deleted the message immediately, his heart rate picking up. This wasn't part of their usual communication protocol. Something must be wrong. The parking garage was dimly lit, the fluorescent lights creating pools of sickly yellow illumination between long shadows. Isabella's footsteps echoed as he made his way to level B2, every sense on high alert. Judith emerged from behind a concrete pillar, looking nervous. Sorry for the irregular contact, but this couldn't wait. What's wrong? Courtney's been accessing more files, not just the trial documents anymore. She's going through personnel files, security protocols, communication logs. Judith lowered her voice. She's looking for patterns, people who might be working with law enforcement. Isabella kept his expression neutral, though his pulse quickened. Any particular focus? Asian employees who've raised concerns. Judith hesitated. She's paying special attention to your department, your team's travel records, expense reports, phone logs. She suspects something. I think she more than suspects. Judith glanced around nervously. Isabella, those employees who disappeared, they didn't just vanish. There's a pattern. First, their files get flagged for review, then they get called to special meetings, usually in remote locations. After that, Isabella's mind raced. How many flags has she raised recently? 3 in the past week. 2 researchers in the Shanghai office, and, she met his eyes, your assistant, Samuel Chun. Samuel, who'd been helping Isabella gather evidence on the illegal trials, who had access to some of their most sensitive intelligence. When's his meeting scheduled? Tomorrow morning, Shanghai office. Isabella started to respond, but movement in his peripheral vision made him freeze. A shadow where there shouldn't be one, the faint scuff of a shoe on concrete. Get out of here, he whispered to Judith. She didn't argue, disappearing behind a row of cars. Just as the first attacker emerged, Isabella recognized him immediately. Tom Huber, head of McLaughlin's private security team. Behind him, 2 more men spread out, cutting off escape routes. Mr. Cooper, Huber said pleasantly, having a nice chat. Isabella shifted his weight, evaluating options. 3 trained security personnel, probably armed, limited cover, no backup. Just discussing parking validation, Isabella replied, matching Huber's casual tone. These garage fees are killer. Funny guy, Huber's smile disappeared. But I don't think Miss Price will find this situation amusing at all. The mention of Courtney confirmed Isabella's fears. This wasn't a random security check. This was a message. The first punch came from the left, faster than Isabella expected. He managed to deflect it, turning the movement into a counterstrike that caught his attacker in the solar plexus. But Huber was already moving, and the third man had circled behind. Isabella felt rather than saw the blow to his kidneys, driving him to one knee. He rolled with the impact, coming up in a fighting stance. But Huber was ready. The security chief's foot caught Isabella's right arm with a sickening crack. Pain exploded through Isabella's body as he hit the concrete. Through the haze of agony, he heard footsteps approaching, familiar footsteps, the click of heels he'd heard every morning for the past 3 years. Courtney emerged from the shadows, her expression as cold as Isabella had ever seen it. She looked down at him, and for a moment he searched her face for any sign of the woman he married, any trace of genuine emotion. "I'm sorry, Isabella," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. "But you were getting too close. Matt couldn't risk it." Matt, not Tom anymore. The casual intimacy of the nickname felt like another blow. "How long?" Isabella managed through gritted teeth. "Does it matter?" Courtney's lips curved in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You were so perfect, you know," the dedicated FBI agent, so convinced of his own righteousness. "Matt needed someone close to you to watch you, and you made it so easy." Isabella tried to push himself up, but his broken arm wouldn't support his weight. The conference in Chicago, perfectly planned. Yes, the clumsy researcher spilling coffee on the handsome stranger. She laughed softly. "I thought that might have been a bit too obvious, but you never questioned it. You saw what you wanted to see. The employees you made disappear," Isabella ground out. "Are they dead?" Something flickered in Courtney's eyes, the first genuine emotion he'd seen. "That's not your concern anymore." She nodded to Huber, who stepped forward with a syringe. Isabella tried to move, to fight, but the pain in his arm made his vision blur. "Just something to help you rest," Courtney said, already turning away. "When you wake up, remember this conversation. Remember what happens to people who get too curious." The final image Isabella registered before succumbing to unconsciousness was Courtney's receding silhouette, her high heels tapping sharply against the garage's concrete floor, the noise reverberating through the space like a series of gunshots. The sharp, sterile scent of hospital-grade antiseptic roused Isabella from his blackout. His eyelids were weighted, and a deep, constant ache pulsed through his right arm. Underneath the plaster and gauze, the heart monitor beside his bed emitted a steady, rhythmic beep, its green trace flickering across the display like a taunting symbol of his continuing heartbeat. Through the fog of painkillers, Isabella systematically inventoried his environment, relying on his FBI training. A private room on the 3rd floor, deduced from the security camera mounted in the upper right corner. A standard hospital window overlooking the parking lot. A possible entry or exit route, though risky with a fractured arm. A typical hospital bed placed against the interior wall. His right arm was wrapped in a clean white cast, propped on a pile of pillows that failed to fully dull the profound soreness. A nurse entered, her rubber-soled shoes emitting faint squeaks on the linoleum flooring. Her identification badge identified her as Marcia Mitchell, RN, as she moved with practiced efficiency around his bed, inspecting monitors and fine-tuning equipment. "Good to see you're awake, Mr. Cooper," she remarked, logging his vital signs onto a tablet. "How would you rate your pain on a scale of 1 to 10? 4. Isabella fibbed, the throbbing closer to a 7. "How long was I unconscious?" "Approximately 12 hours. The police are waiting to take your statement regarding the garage incident." She adjusted his foredrip with skilled hands. "You've also had several visitors from Meridian Pharmaceuticals inquiring about you. A very persistent group." Isabella maintained a neutral expression, though his thoughts raced through the implications. 12 hours of unconsciousness meant 12 hours of exposure. Had Judith escaped the garage safely? Had Courtney accessed confidential files while he was incapacitated? Had any other agents been endangered? The door swung open again, the substantial wooden panel moving wide as Ava Gill strode in as if he owned the premises. Meridian's head of Asian operations was an imposing presence in his custom charcoal suit, his silver hair impeccably groomed despite the early hour. A gold Rolex gleamed at his wrist as he adjusted his French cuffs. A man who wore his authority like a second skin. "Give us the room," he commanded the nurse, his tone permitting no dissent. She paused briefly, glancing at Isabella before collecting her tablet and departing. Isabella observed Gill settling into the visitor's chair, noting the man's relaxed stance and the subtle amusement at the edges of his mouth. This was not a social visit. It was a performance. Your wife sends her regards, Gil stated, his voice saturated with feigned sympathy. A terrible accident, tumbling down those garage stairs. You really ought to be more cautious. He smoothed a non-existent crease from his trousers. Although I understand the security cameras inexplicably failed during your mishap. Is that the official account? Isabella's throat was parched, but he kept his tone even. For now. Gil's smile broadened, revealing too many teeth. Courtney is quite resourceful, isn't she? She always knows precisely how to manage situations. She has been an invaluable asset to our organization in the way she handles our more sensitive affairs. He inclined forward slightly. Every significant investor has appreciated her hospitality, even your cousin, Aiden. Isabella's heart rate surged, though years of discipline kept the monitor's rhythm consistent. Aiden Gwynn was not his cousin. He was another undercover FBI agent planted in Meridian's investor relations division for the past 18 months. If Courtney had breached his cover, I don't know what you're referring to, Isabella replied, keeping his voice flat despite the mounting dread in his stomach. No. Gil retrieved his phone, his manicured fingers scrolling through images with deliberate slowness. Here's Courtney with Aiden at last month's investor dinner. They appeared quite friendly, though not as intimate as she becomes with Tom, naturally. He turned the phone, displaying a high-definition photo of Courtney laughing at something Aiden was saying, her hand on his arm. Isabella compelled himself to study the photo, scrutinizing details through his professional lens. Aiden upheld his cover, perfectly enacting the part of the affluent investor. Yet now, the cautious distance he maintained from Courtney made greater sense. How he always positioned himself just beyond her reach, how he steered conversations toward others whenever feasible. Had he suspected something all along? If you're attempting to provoke jealousy, Isabella said, you're squandering your time. My wife's social abilities are part of her role. Gil chuckled, the sound ominous and knowing. Jealousy is the least of your present concerns. You see, Courtney has been exceptionally thorough in recording everything. Every meeting, every transaction, every minor indiscretion. Insurance, she terms it. Highly professional, highly detailed. He returned the phone to his pocket. She likely learned that from Tom, I imagine. Always maintain leverage over everyone. A knock at the door interrupted them. Agent Roman Herman entered, her FBI badge clearly visible on her blazer. Her gaze swept the room, assessing the situation with experienced efficiency. Mr. Gil, she stated coolly, I need to speak with Mr. Cooper concerning the assault investigation. Gil rose smoothly, adjusting his already immaculate suit. Certainly, I was just departing. He halted at the door, looking back at Isabella. Reflect on what I mentioned, Isabella, about being careful. Stairs can be remarkably hazardous. Once the door shut, Roman swiftly scanned the room for listening devices while sustaining a loud dialogue about the assault inquiry. Detecting nothing, she lowered her voice to a near whisper. Aiden's cover remains intact, she murmured, positioning herself to obstruct the security camera's view of her face. But Courtney has been asking questions, probing his background, verifying his references. She's attempting to confirm his connection to you. She possesses photos of them together at events. We know Aiden reported every interaction. He believes she was testing him, observing his reactions when she touched him or drew too near. Roman's expression darkened. She's intelligent, Isabella, more so than we credited her for. The manner in which she's been documenting everything, compiling insurance dossiers. This extends beyond an affair with Tom. She's been executing a longer strategy. The Asian employees, Isabella said, his right arm aching as he shifted. We reached Samuel in time. He's secure in a safe house. But the others, Roman shook her head. We're still searching. The trail vanishes after they're summoned to meetings in isolated areas. No bodies, no evidence. They simply disappear. Before Isabella could reply, the door burst open, the heavy panel striking the wall. Tom McLaughlin entered, accompanied by two security guards who stationed themselves on either side of the door. The CEO's typically polished look was somewhat disordered. His tie was slackened, his collar open, a slight sweat sheen on his forehead. His eyes blazed with an intensity Isabella had never witnessed. Out, he snapped at Roman, his voice edged with authority. I'm conducting an official investigation. Out, McLaughlin's voice cracked like a whip. Or I'll have hospital security escort you out. This is a private facility, and Mr. Cooper remains a Meridian employee. I have every right to confer with him. Roman met Isabella's eyes briefly before exiting, a silent communication passing between them. Exercise caution. The door closed with a soft click that seemed to resonate in the abrupt silence. Tom waited a full 30 seconds, presumably for Roman to move beyond earshot, before advancing toward Isabella's bed. Without preamble, he tossed a manila envelope onto Isabella's lap. Photographs spilled across the white hospital blanket. Surveillance images of Isabella meeting Judith in the parking garage, with Roman at a cafe, with other FBI agents in diverse locations over recent months. Resign now, Tom demanded, his voice strained with controlled fury. Walk away from Meridian, sign a non-disclosure agreement, and we'll consider the matter closed. Even your wife has already chosen her side, smart woman. He gestured toward the photos. Or we can deliberate what occurs to individuals who spy on my corporation. Isabella examined the photos, his mind processing the ramifications. The surveillance indicated they suspected him but lacked definitive evidence of his FBI ties. If they had possessed that, this discussion would be markedly different and likely occurring in a far less public venue. These could represent anything, Isabella said, carefully keeping his tone impartial. Business meetings, consultations with prospective clients. Don't insult my intelligence. Tom leaned closer, near enough that Isabella could detect expensive cologne and what might have been scotch on his breath. Next time, we break more than bones. And believe me, there are numerous bones we haven't touched yet. His eyes flicked to Isabella's cast. This was a caution. The next won't be as lenient. Is that what transpired with the whistleblowers? Isabella met McLaughlin's gaze steadily. Shattered bones until they vanished. Something flickered in McLaughlin's eyes, surprise, apprehension, before his controlled facade reinstated itself. For an instant, Isabella detected uncertainty. Tom had not anticipated his knowledge of the whistleblowers. I don't know what you're alluding to. The CEO straightened, adjusting his tie with slightly unsteady hands. You have 24 hours to tender your resignation. After that, he shrugged, the gesture almost elegant in its menace. Accidents occur. Inquire with your wife. She's quite informed about unfortunate accidents. After McLaughlin departed, Isabella waited 5 minutes before pressing the call button. A different nurse entered, younger, male, with closely cropped dark hair and the assured movements characteristic of law enforcement. Isabella recognized him as one of Roman's team, though they had never formally met. I require my phone, Isabella stated meaningfully. The nurse nodded, extracting a secure phone from his pocket. Agent Herman left this for you. Any messages? Inform her to review the office cameras from last Thursday. Concentrate on Courtney's access to the secure servers. Isabella kept his voice low, mindful of potential surveillance. And obtain everything on Ava Gill's activities in Asia over the past year. Every journey, every meeting, every contact. The nurse noted the instructions on his pad, preserving his cover. Your medication may induce drowsiness. Attempt to rest. Isabella closed his eyes, feigning sleep, but his mind was accelerating. McLaughlin's threat seemed hasty, desperate. Something had alarmed them, something beyond mere suspicion of his FBI affiliation. But what? The answer arrived after midnight, when the hospital corridors were hushed and the night shift had settled into routine. Isabella heard the gentle click of his door opening and tensed, reaching for the alert button, but relaxed upon recognizing Judith McNeil's slender form slipping into his room. She appeared altered from their last encounter in the garage, her usual professional attire replaced by dark clothing, her face pallid with anxiety, her motions swift and nervous. She repeatedly glanced at the door as she approached his bed. You shouldn't be here, Isabella said quietly, observing the tremor in her hands. They know. Judith's voice quivered slightly as she perched on the edge of the visitor's chair. About the FBI investigation. Not everything, but sufficient. Courtney has been reviewing old security footage, cross-referencing visitor logs. She's nearing identification of your team. Isabella's grip tightened on his blanket. How much time do we possess? Less than you anticipate. Judith glanced nervously at the door again. Courtney intends to depart the country tonight. Tom arranged everything. New identity, new documentation, a secure location where they can't be extradited. She twisted her hands together. Their meeting is at his private airstrip. When? 3 a.m. She has evidence against everyone, including particulars of the FBI operation, files, photographs, recordings. Judith wrung her hands, her wedding ring catching the faint light. She plans to exchange it all for immunity with a foreign government. Once she does, the entire operation will be jeopardized. Isabella completed the thought. Years of effort, dozens of agents and informants revealed, innumerable lives endangered. All because he misjudged the wrong individual, because he permitted personal and professional realms to intertwine, exactly as Roman had cautioned. Get somewhere safe, he instructed Judith. Don't return home, don't go to work, simply vanish for a few hours. Judith nodded and slipped out as silently as she had entered. Isabella waited until the sound of her footsteps faded before seizing the secure phone and dialing Roman's number from memory. She answered on the first ring. What's wrong? Change of plans, he said, his voice tense with urgency. We move tonight. You're in no condition. Courtney is fleeing tonight with everything she has on us. Isabella pushed himself upright, disregarding the pain shooting through his arm. Tom's private airstrip, 3 a.m. A prolonged pause ensued, filled only by the soft sound of Roman's breathing. How reliable is the intel? Judith. She came here personally to alert me. She was frightened. Roman, genuinely terrified. Keys clicked in the background as Roman typed. This alters everything. If Courtney possesses proof of our operation, I know. More typing followed, then a sharp inhalation. Gil has been placing calls to Shanghai all day. A private jet just filed a flight plan. It corresponds. Isabella closed his eyes, recalling the cold expression in Courtney's eyes as she watched him injured in the garage. Had she been orchestrating this even then? Had everything, their entire marriage, been constructing toward this moment? Isabella, Roman's voice softened. Are you certain about this? About tonight? He contemplated the surveillance photos of Courtney with McLaughlin, all the falsehoods and betrayals layered upon one another. He reflected on the missing employees, the families awaiting answers, the lives at risk. Make the calls, he said. Get everyone in position. We conclude this tonight. Okay. A pause. I'll manage everything. Just be prudent, Isabella. Don't allow it to become personal. Isabella nearly laughed at that. Personal? As if anything could be more personal than uncovering that your entire marriage was an elaborate deception. As if observing your wife aid in coordinating disappearances and betrayals wasn't the most personal experience imaginable. Simply prepare the team, he said. We have under 3 hours. He terminated the call and gazed out the window at the night sky, his broken arm a persistent reminder of his grave miscalculations. In 3 hours, he would confront Courtney again. In 3 hours, everything would transform, but this time he would be prepared. The private airstrip's floodlights cast severe shadows across the tarmac as Isabella Cooper observed through binoculars from his concealed position in the tree line. His broken arm throbbed beneath the lightweight tactical sling that had replaced the hospital cast, but he dismissed the pain, concentrating on the Gulfstream G650 undergoing final preparations for departure. Ground crew members hurried around the aircraft like ants, conducting last checks under the vigilant supervision of Tom's security team. Echo team in position, Agent Marcia Chin's voice crackled through his earpiece. Surveillance cameras active. We have visual on all entry points. Copy. Roman responded from her command post. Delta team, perimeter secured, another voice reported. No indication of local law enforcement. Tom's personnel must have arranged that. Isabella adjusted his stance behind the cover of thick foliage, cautious not to rustle any branches. The irony was not lost on him. Here he was, concealed in bushes to surveil his own wife, much like the initial surveillance photos that had initiated this entire unraveling. Except this time, he was not the one being deceived. Aiden's voice came through the comms. Next, common professional. I'm on the flight deck, a real pilot, secured in the hangar, still unconscious from the sedative. Flight plans logged for Shanghai, just as our intel suggested. Remember, Roan's voice carried the weight of command. We need visual confirmation of the evidence exchange. If we move too early, they'll claim it was a business meeting. Chun, are the cameras? Multiple angles covered. Marcia confirmed high-res, night vision, everything admissible in court. A pair of headlights swept across the first strip as a black Bentley approached the private terminal. My grip tightened on the binoculars. Tom McLaughlin stepped out first, immaculate in a charcoal suit despite the late hour. He circled to the passenger side, opening the door with practiced gallantry. Courtney emerged, and Isabella's breath caught despite himself. She wore the same cream-colored suit she'd worn the day they first met, her dark hair falling in perfect waves past her shoulders. The Addy case in her right hand might as well have been handcuffed to her wrist. Visual on primary targets, Isabella murmured into his calm, moving toward the aircraft, Adele case present. Wait for the exchange. Roman reminded everyone. We need them red-handed. Isabella watched through the binoculars as Courtney and McLaughlin approached the plane. They moved with the easy intimacy of longtime lovers, his hand resting casually on the small of her back. Had they always been this obvious? Had he just been too blind to see? I have movement in the hangar, Marcia reported. Suddenly, two figures armed, looking like Gil and Huber Ava. Gil emerged from the shadows. Tom Huber, close behind, the head of Asian operations, carried his own briefcase, while Huber's hand rested near the obvious bulge of a shoulder holster. Careful, Isabella warned. Huber's likely not alone. His team never operates without backup. Confirmed, came another agent's voice. 3 more armed individuals identified at the perimeter. Standard private security, low profile. The group converged at the base of the aircraft stairs. Isabella adjusted his focus, watching Courtney's expressions, reading her lips as she spoke. 3 years of marriage had taught him her tells. The slight tilt of her head when she was being calculating, the way she shifted her weight when preparing for something significant. Starting the exchange, he reported as Courtney set her Adele case on a small folding table Huber had produced. Stand by. McLaughlin spoke first, his words carrying faintly across the tarmac. Everything we discussed, complete dossier. Courtney replied, her voice clinical and professional. FBI operations in 3 countries, including deep cover agents, informants, and evidence chains. She unlatched the case, plus the original trial data showing exactly how we handled the whistleblowers. Show me. Courtney spread several files across the table. Even from this distance, Isabella recognized some of the documents. Case files he'd helped build, surveillance photos of FBI operations, personnel records of undercover agents. Years of careful work, dozens of lives, all laid out like playing cards. Holy _. Marcia breathed through the calm, the extent of her access. She is everything, not everything, Isabella muttered. She doesn't know about the cameras recording her right now. Gil stepped forward, examining the documents with practiced efficiency. The Asian facility records, including detailed locations of all our reluctant former employees. Courtney's smile was sharp in the floodlights. Everything you need to ensure loose and stay tied. All units, maintain position, Roman ordered as several agents shifted restlessly. Wait for my mark. McLaughlin nodded to Gil, who opened his own briefcase. As promised, new identity packages, Swiss accounts already funded, contact protocols for your handlers in Shanghai. He slid the documents across the table. Once you land, you'll be FBI free. The shout came from the darkness as floodlights suddenly blazed to life, bathing the scene in stark white illumination. FBI tactical teams emerged from multiple positions, weapons trained on the group. Hands where we can see them. Roman's voice boomed through a megaphone. Step away from the table. The next few seconds exploded into controlled chaos. Huber reached for his weapon, but froze as red laser sights danced across his chest. Gil tried to grab the briefcase, but was tackled by 2 agents. McLaughlin stood absolutely still, his face a mask of cold fury. Courtney's reaction was pure ice. She didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't show any surprise at all. Instead, she turned slowly, scanning the perimeter until her eyes found Isabella's position. Well, honey, she called out, her voice carrying clearly across the tarmac. Enjoying the show? Did you really think I didn't know you'd be here? Isabella emerged from his cover, approaching the scene with measured steps. Like you knew about the cameras recording everything, the backup teams, Aiden in the cockpit? That last bit finally cracked her composure. Courtney's head snapped toward the aircraft, where Aiden Hanford appeared in the doorway, his FBI tactical vest now clearly visible. Good riddance, honey, she sneered. But Isabella heard the slight tremor in her voice. Better luck with your next wife. You should have checked the pilot's credentials more carefully. Isabella allowed himself a small smile as more agents moved in to secure the suspects. But then, you always did underestimate family connections. Aiden gave a small salute from the cockpit, and Isabella saw the exact moment Courtney understood how completely she'd been outplayed. The look of betrayal that flashed across her face almost matched what Isabella had felt in that parking garage. Almost. Read them their rights, Roman ordered, approaching with her weapon still drawn. Secure all documents and devices, as agents zip-tied the suspects. Isabella watched Courtney's mask finally crack. Her carefully constructed world was crumbling, and for the first time, he saw real emotion in her eyes. Fear. You don't understand, she said as an agent secured her hands behind her back. Those people, the ones who disappeared, they were going to expose everything. The trials, the deaths, save it for your lawyer, Roman cut her off. You'll have plenty of time to explain everything, including how you acquired classified FBI files. McLaughlin, being cuffed nearby, suddenly laughed. You think this changes anything? Our lawyers will have us out by morning. Her word against ours, and all the evidence mysteriously corrupted. Actually, Judith McNeil's voice rang out as she emerged from the shadows, flanked by two agents. I think my evidence might change that calculation. She held up a thumb drive. Every email, every transaction, every conversation about what really happened to those whistleblowers. I've been documenting everything since the first person disappeared. McLaughlin's face went ash gray. You little, book them all, Roman ordered. Daisy was breaking by the time the scene was fully processed. Isabella sat in the back of a tactical van, watching through the open doors as evidence was cataloged and suspects were transported. His arm ached fiercely, but he barely noticed. You okay? Roman asked, settling beside him with 2 cups of coffee. Ask me in 6 months. She smiled slightly. Speaking of which, she handed him a newspaper, the ink still wet. The headline blazed across the front page. Pharmaceutical CEO and chief researcher arrested in massive conspiracy. Isabella scanned the article, noting the careful way it laid out the charges without compromising ongoing operations. Courtney was already trying to make a deal. Tried, Roman corrected. But your recordings of her organizing the disappearances harmed any leverage she had. McLaughlin's attempt to blame everything on her backfired when Judith produced those emails. They're both looking at 25 years minimum, no parole. And the victims, Roman's expression softened. The whistleblowers Courtney helped disappear. All found alive, traumatized, but alive. Your recordings gave us their locations, hidden in research facilities across Asia. We're bringing them home now. Isabella nodded, relief washing through him. At least some good had come from all this. At least some families would get answers, get closure. You should get that arm checked, Roman said, gesturing to his sling. Now that it's over? It's not over, Isabella interrupted. Not yet. I need to understand why. Was any of it real, Isabella? I know it doesn't matter now, but he stared at the newspaper photo of Courtney being led away in handcuffs. 3 years, Roan. 3 years of marriage, of sharing a life, of building trust. How do you fake that? Some people are just very good at playing roles, Roman said gently. At becoming whoever they need to be. Yeah. Isabella touched his cast through the tactical sling. At least the break was clean, unlike everything else. 6 months later, Isabella sat in a quiet bar, nursing a whiskey as he watched Courtney's sentencing play out on the wall-mounted TV. The sound was muted, but the headlines told the story. 25 years for both her and McLaughlin, no deals, no reduced sentences. You're brooding, Roman said, sliding onto the bar stool next to him. Thinking, he corrected, about clean breaks and healing wrong deep. She signaled the bartender. How's the arm? Isabella rotated his right wrist, testing the range of motion. The break had healed well, stronger than before. Unlike his marriage, unlike his trust, the bone had mended cleanly. Better, he said finally. Getting stronger every day. And you? He considered the question, really considered it. The betrayal, still acidic, but differently now, like an old injury that predicted rain, present but no longer debilitating. Same, he said, finishing his drink. Getting stronger every day. Through the bar's window, he could see his reflection in the darkened glass. He looked different than he had 6 months ago, harder in some ways, but more certain. The break had been clean after all, and sometimes, he was learning, things healed stronger at the broken places. 5 years later, the high-security wing of the Federal Correctional Institution in Dublin, California, looked exactly as it had during Isabella Cooper's last visit 3 years ago. The same stark walls, the same fluorescent lighting, the same hollow echo of footsteps on polished floors. He hadn't planned on returning, but Roman's call had changed that. "Courtney's asking for you," she'd said. "She has information about other operations we missed." The guard led Isabella through familiar security checkpoints. His right arm passed easily through the metal detector. The break had healed years ago, leaving only occasional twinges during cold weather to remind him of that night in the parking garage. Courtney Price, she kept his last name, ironically, sat at the metal table in the interview room. Prison hadn't been kind to her. The designer suits were replaced by standard-issue khaki, her once perfect hair now streaked with gray. But her eyes were the same, calculating, always measuring angles. "You look good," she said as Isabella sat across from her. "Private sector agrees with you. Cut the small talk." Isabella placed his recorder on the table. "Roman says you have information. Always business." Courtney's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Did you know Tom tried to hang himself last month in his cell at Lompoc? Failed, of course, like everything else lately." Isabella said nothing. He'd heard about McLaughlin's suicide attempt through official channels. The former CEO had deteriorated rapidly after his appeals were denied, especially after evidence emerged linking Meridian to 3 more deaths in their Asian facilities. 5 years, Courtney continued, studying her hands. 5 years in here, watching everything we built crumble. The company sold for parts, our research buried, all those breakthroughs lost. You mean the illegal human trials, the attacked whistleblowers? We were changing the world. Courtney snapped, the first crack in her composure. Those drugs could have saved millions. A few sacrifices, save it for your next parole hearing. Isabella tapped the recorder. "You said you had information. Start it, or I'm leaving." Courtney leaned back, her chains rattling slightly. Ava Gill didn't work alone in Asia. We had government officials, other pharmaceutical companies, a whole network. We know. Judith McNeil's evidence exposed everything. That's why your sentence got extended to 30 years. Judith. Courtney's laugh was bitter. "My perfect assistant. Did you know she's running the reformulated company now, Meridian Biotech, clean and ethical? She married Aiden last year, didn't she?" Isabella nodded. The wedding had been small but joyful. Judith and Aiden had found something real in the aftermath of the investigation, building a relationship based on truth rather than deception. Their leadership of the reformed Meridian had helped restore jobs and legitimate research programs. And Roman, Courtney's voice turned probing, still running the FBI's corporate crime division. "I heard she made deputy director. I'm not here to update you on everyone's lives." "No." Courtney tilted her head. "Then why are you here, Isabella?" "We both know I don't have any new information. You've squeezed every lead, every contact, every secret from our operation. So why come when I called?" Isabella studied the woman he'd once loved, or thought he'd loved. The woman who'd played him for 3 years, who'd helped coordinate disappearances and deaths, who'd betrayed everything he believed in. "Closure, maybe," he said, finally understanding. "Ah." Courtney's smile turned knowing. "Still trying to figure out if any of it was real. If I ever actually loved you, would it make a difference now?" Isabella stood, gathering his recorder. "Goodbye, Courtney. I did, you know." Her voice stopped him at the door. "Love you in my way. But I loved power more. The control, the influence, the empire we were building." She shrugged. "Tom understood that. You never did." "No," Isabella agreed. "I didn't." He left her there, surrounded by concrete and steel, and walked into the California sunshine. His phone buzzed with a text from Marcia, now his partner at their private security consulting firm. "Client meeting at 2. Don't be late this time." Isabella smiled slightly. After leaving the FBI, he and Marcia had built a successful business helping companies protect whistleblowers and expose corporate corruption. Their firm's reputation for integrity had made them the go-to consultants for businesses wanting to clean up their operations. His next stop was a small cafe in San Joanna's financial district. Roman Herman sat at their usual table, 2 coffee cups already waiting. "How'd it go?" she asked as he settled into his chair. No new information, just wanted to play mind games. Roman nodded, unsurprised. McLaughlin's the same. Keeps requesting meetings, claiming he has evidence about other conspiracies. It's all manipulation. How's the investigation into their remaining assets? Almost complete. Roman sipped her coffee. We've frozen everything we could find. Most of it's going to a victim compensation fund. Tom Huber rolled over on their last few hidden accounts in exchange for a reduced sentence. And Ava Gill dead. Roman's expression hardened. Apparent heart attack in his cell last week, but we found traces of a specialized meridian compound in his bloodstream. Someone didn't want him talking anymore. Isabella absorbed this information, thinking of the complex web of corruption they had exposed. Even now, 5 years later, new threads kept emerging. The whistleblowers, he asked. Doing well, mostly. The support program you set up has helped. Most have new jobs, new lives. A few are working with advocacy groups, helping other corporate whistleblowers come forward. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city move around them. Isabella's phone buzzed again. A message from Samuel Chun, his former assistant, now running his own ethical investment firm. Samuel had become a leading voice for corporate accountability. You know, Roman mentioned driving carefully. The deputy director role in the corporate crime division remains available. Your background, your network, I am finished with federal service. Isabella's tone was soft yet resolute. The private sector allows me to select my battles, assist people directly, and it enables you to maintain your distance from situations like Courtney's. Isabella did not dispute it. How much longer will you remain in until the task is complete? Rock stood straight in her shoulders. Someone must continue fighting the good fight from within. Speaking of fighting, Isabella glanced at his watch. I need to leave for that client meeting. Marcia will harm me if I am late again. How is Marcia still dating that tech whistleblower? Engaged now. A small ceremony is planned for spring. Isabella stood, dropping cash for the coffee. You are invited. Of course, I would not miss it. Outside, Isabella paused to savor the warm autumn air. His phone displayed another message, this one from Judith. The board approved the new whistleblower protection program. Implementation begins next month. Thank you for your guidance. He typed a quick reply, recalling how far they had all come. Judith and Aiden transforming Meridian's ruins into something positive. Marcia and Samuel using their experiences to protect others. Rockland continuing the struggle from inside the system. And himself, the broken arm had healed, stronger, just like the rest of him. The trust issues lingered, but they had made him better at his job, more attuned to deception, more dedicated to truth. His car chirped as he approached, and Isabella caught his reflection in the window. Gray touched his temples now, and faint lines marked the corners of his eyes, but his gaze was clear, unburdened by the weight of betrayal that had haunted him 5 years ago. Courtney and McLaughlin would serve their sentences. Their empire of lies was now just a cautionary tale in corporate ethics seminars. Their victims had found justice, their whistleblowers had found peace, and their web of corruption had been exposed to sunlight. Isabella's phone buzzed one final time, a message from Aiden. Judith says you should come to dinner. We are celebrating something. He smiled, typing back his acceptance. This was his life now, building connections based on honesty, fighting corruption from the outside, helping others heal from betrayal. The broken places had mended stronger, and the truth had finally set him free. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows as Isabella drove toward his office. In a prison cell in Dublin, Courtney would be returning to her daily routine, counting days until her next parole hearing. In another cell in Locke, McLaughlin would be plotting his next appeal. His empire of cards had long since collapsed. But here in the world they tried to corrupt. Justice had prevailed, the truth had emerged, and those who had fought for it had found something better than power. They had found purpose. Isabella parked outside the office building, straightening his tie as he prepared for the client meeting. The security firm's logo caught the sunlight. Cooper and Shun Consulting, protecting truth, empowering change. 5 years ago, he thought Courtney's betrayal would destroy him. Instead, it had set him on a path to something greater. Sometimes the deepest wounds led to the most important healing. Sometimes the worst betrayals sparked the strongest commitments to truth. And sometimes, Isabella thought as he walked into his office to help another whistleblower find their voice, the broken places really did heal stronger than before. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen, and I will see you there.